Patriots Beat podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Spagnoli. Joined with me, as always, my good friend Alex Barth, who is a warrior here. He's been battling. If you didn't pay attention, we didn't have a show on Thursday.
Yeah, my
Barth is
apologies for that.
it's his
Nobody
Jordan
might.
flu game. It's his Jordan flu
Yeah,
game today.
I've been a little under the weather. I didn't really have a voice on Thursday, so there wouldn't have been, or Friday, so there wouldn't have been much of a show. So that's my apologies, but we're back. Shouldn't be any more interruptions from here on out.
Barth's flu game. That's all we're gonna call it today.
Sure.
But let's get into, I guess, right into it. And we were just talking, and I think it's a great way. I don't want to sit here and break down the loss. I don't, dive into. We can get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the main takeaway, and we just agreed on that, and it's funny, we usually do have similar opinions on things, which is always good. But
Yeah.
I think Mac Jones has taken way too much heat. Crap, whatever you want to call it, for this loss. Obviously, the injury is the injury. I thought, say what you want about the picks. That was probably his best game throwing the football as a pro. Is that too crazy to say?
Moments.
Some of those, right? Like,
I go back to the Cleveland game last year, the Jacksonville game last year, but he had. It's, I think it was perfectly emblematic of that game. Sorry to cut you off, but it kind of piggybacks right on your point there. Mac's two best throws, one ended in a turnover, one probably should have. That throw to Aguilar was an absolute missile. Rocket. That was a high-level throw. Nobody's going to talk about that, of course, because Nelson Aguilar then fumbles the ball, 5 seconds later? On the next drive, he delivers a beautiful touch pass to Kendrick Bourne, which Kendrick Bourne then fumbles and ultimately recovered, and Mac throws the final interception, gets hurt on, I don't know if it was the next play or the play after, but shortly thereafter, so nobody's talking about that. No, Mac, I think, showed anybody coming away from this game with the thought that Mac is not an NFL quarterback. You're either...
Keep your comments to yourself, please.
You either didn't really watch, you don't know what you're watching, which if you don't know what you're watching, credit to you for watching the show, because you'll learn, we'll teach you. That's the point of the show. Or you're just trying to get ahead of the curve on hot take. Like, that's not the takeaway from this game, that Mac is not good enough. That's not what the issue was. Those throws you saw in those moments, a guy who's not good enough doesn't make those throws.
Like I said, I thought he controlled the line of scrimmage. He moved the ball. They took some shots. He was 8 for 11 on throws, 25 plus yards down the field. They finally started to open things up. He spread the ball around really well. I thought Jonnu Smith got involved. Devontae Parker had his best game here. Kendrick Bourne was more involved. Nelson, right? Like, that was everything you wanted to see. The throw to Parker in the end zone, I'm not, backing up the kid, but I think, Parker might have ran the wrong route there.
That was a breakdown all around. It wasn't a good play call to begin with. Parker ran a bad route. Go watch the offensive line on that play. There's a reason he's throwing off his back foot, right? There's a lot to that.
Right. No, it was an all around, it was a tough loss, right? And it reminded me a lot of that Dallas game because, from last year, because it's one of those games they were in it. It was a winnable game. It was back and forth. It was extremely competitive, very good football to watch, and they just were one or two plays away. But just the Mac Jones, like you guys, the fans they baffle me, because it's the first people last year to back the guy after winning 10 games as a rookie with all new faces on the offensive line, not even offensive line. Then this year he's got two new quarterback coaches, a de facto offensive coordinator,
a new offensive
brand
line.
new offensive line, like, and it's all of a sudden he's not the future.
Nobody's a fit for.
Tank for CJ Stroud. Guys are it's mind-boggling. It's frustrating. It's pathetic, to be honest. This
is what happens with these teams. That it's not like the Jets have never had a quarterback, or the Browns have never had a quarterback because they constantly draft the wrong guy. That's some of it. That's certainly some of it. But some of it also is they put those quarterbacks in bad situations. They don't correctly develop those guys. On the flip side, you see a ton of players in the league now that maybe weren't the perfect prospects coming out, had some nice traits, but weren't the perfect prospects coming out, but went into an environment that was a perfect setup and have become elite quarterbacks. I would argue the Patriots just faced a guy like that in Lamar Jackson. And people have watched this show for a long time. Going back to when I worked at CLNS, no, I wasn't a big Lamar Jackson fan back in the day. He's progressed so much, especially as a thrower. And a lot of that is the team has put him in a spot to succeed. He didn't have to worry about anything but himself. He was able to work on himself. He put in a ton of work. Credit to him. This isn't to take away from him. Credit to him. And now if he keeps up what he's doing this year through 3 games, he's going to win his second MVP. That was an MVP performance on Sunday. With Mac Jones, and Ryan, you touched on some of this. Promising first year, promising for looked good. And, things happen. They lost Josh McDaniels. That happens. But they don't bring in a real new offensive coordinator. They have a defensive coach who's never done this before. It's not like it's a first-year offensive coordinator who was a quarterback's coach or was a tight ends coach or was this or was that. They bring in a first-year offensive coordinator who's his first year in decades on that side of the ball, changes the system, puts in a system that Mac and the majority of his teammates are not fits for, completely rearranges the offensive line to the point where it's patchwork, and that showed up on Sunday, especially at the tackle spot. And then, on top of that, they refused to put his favorite and arguably best receiver on the field.
For the last 3 weeks
People are asking what happened to Mac. I would flip that question and say, well, what did you think was going to happen, when you lay it all out like that? What did you expect? Frankly, it may be going better than it really should, the way they have this whole thing set up. So, can Mac be better? Yes. But
this comment,
yeah, okay. Mac has 6 turnovers. Why? He was not a turnover guy last year. This kind of regression, this would be
He's never
fun.
has been. That's the problem with this hate is it's so unlike him. This goes back to his college days. He's never been the athletic guy. He's never been a guy that's going to wow you with his arm. He wins at the line of scrimmage, doesn't turn the ball over, and typically outsmarts his opponent to be able to, be an efficient quarterback.
Right.
We've seen none of that this year. That just automatically happens. No, that doesn't.
If Mac if Mac looked like this last year, I would agree and say, hey, he's probably not an NFL quarterback. We saw what Mac was last year, and having watched him at Alabama, what he was last year is closer to the guy he actually is. This is a product of the environment. Mac
Correct.
has 5
100%.
interceptions. Well, he's throwing a lot. He's throwing so many more high-risk throws this year. I don't think that's a Mac thing. I don't think he came out and decided, I'm just going to chance things all the time. That would be such a departure from the guy he's been his whole career. I think the coaching staff in the new scheme is dictating him making these decisions. And that's what's concerning. I actually think he's doing what the coaching staff wants him to do, as I think he did last year. And that's the problem. I think it's an assignment thing. I don't think it's
He's
a Mac is making the wrong read things.
You can't tell me that,
one more. I see this all. Well, he can't get past his first read. He's not making reads. The reads are dictated by the play design, right? So he might be he is looking around. It's not like he's locking in on receivers. To me, it's the reads are bad. And that goes back to the coaching staff and the design. Phil Perry had a great point about this yesterday, that it's a product. He's a product of his environment right now. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I don't even know what I was going to say, but it's frustrating because and I understand it's part of the quarterback, right? You're going to be, you're elite if your team's winning. You're not good if they're not, right? It's just, That's what fans look at. You got to look outside the box score, right? He had some bad picks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But no one likes to look into the whole operation of when this started, right? We tried to be a little optimistic. This was completely expected with how this went. Not saying he got hurt and stuff like that. Just I'm saying from his stat line and how the team is, this was completely expected. They're lucky they scored 26 points the other night. Their margin for error is so small as a team because they're just everything has to go perfect. I've said it for 3 weeks now. The Buffalo Bills margin for error is this big. They can have look at week 1. They turned the ball over 4 times.
They use most of it. Yeah, and they use most
38-13 or something, whatever the score was. Yeah. Right? this team has such a small margin for error, and obviously the microscope is going to be on the quarterback. But you need to look back really since March. This has been a disaster, and everyone talks about how important that second year is for the quarterback, arguably more important than that first year. He was in the best situation as a rookie quarterback, right? Which is why he was able to jumpstart that development and be able to, go to the Pro Bowl, win 10 games, take the team to the playoffs. Now you can make an argument that he's in the worst situation of those 5 quarterbacks, maybe even worse than
Yeah.
Justin Fields, right? Like it's up there. It's
Nah,
debatable.
he's still not on the Jets. I'd say second worst though. Fields first year coach. They seem to be making look. They're not throwing the ball a ton. They're kind of being patient with them. It's not great, but it's understanding what your young quarterback needs.
I would argue
the Bears are at least doing that for Fields.
I feel bad for the kid.
For Fields or Mac?
Mac, I do genuinely. Yeah,
I do
both
too.
of them. It's a shame for what you built last year, and I understand you lost your offensive coordinator, who's done a fantastic job developing quarterbacks. He has 4 guys right now starting in the league. But like I said, I think we were more on the optimistic side, just trying to be positive for listeners, for everything out there. But if you really look deep down inside, you should have saw this coming in March. This has been a disaster for this kid. And it's not his fault.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I don't want to say like it's entirely not his fault. Could he be better? Yes, he made some bad reads, but I think you can't just yell 5 picks and shut the door. You need to look at the context of those. You have receivers running wrong routes, not knowing the routes. You have receivers not fighting back for the football. He's throwing off his back foot because he's not getting pass protection. Like Mac hasn't played great, but to say, oh, well, if they had an actual quarterback and not Mac, they'd these problems go well beyond Mac Jones at this point. They go well beyond Mac Jones. He's in a rough spot. It's just they need to get it all cleaned up. And some of it I think they can fix relatively quickly, right? Putting Kendrick Bourne back on the field is a snap of the fingers decision. Some of it, the offensive line, the playbook is going to take longer to iron out. The hope is that you get it all figured out before some of the stuff becomes permanent, before he becomes really sped up, before the injuries start to catch up and have an impact on his play. That's when you start to get on, maybe whether he was the guy or not at this point, maybe he's not, maybe it's too late. You don't want to get to that point. And it feels like they are just sprinting towards that point right now. Ryan, we've seen it. I mean, football fans have seen this all the time. There's good quarterbacks, like talented quarterbacks, that get drafted into bad situations and end up being busts, even though they were the right pick and they have tremendous talent. There's good quarterbacks that go to bad situations and end up washing out. We've seen it happen. Mac throwing 3 picks against the Ravens is not a be-all, end-all. He's a bad quarterback. You need to look at the bigger picture.
It's crazy, like how quickly you forget about what they built last year and how excited everyone was. Like, let's get this kid some talent, some structure, organizationally. Like, I don't see anybody, and I don't mean to call anybody out here, but I think the decision, like, everyone's so quick to blame the quarterback. I get it; they're players; they play the game. But your head coach is, the whole thing from the start has been a head scratcher, right? From what you built offensively, defensively they're fine. I don't think there's really much issue there. You knew they were going to be figure it out and figure out to be.
They missed Kyle Duggar badly on Saturday.
But
on
I'm
Sunday.
saying
I don't know if that's the difference of them winning the game or not, but they missed him badly.
It's unfortunate. I feel, like I said before, I feel for the kid because he does all the right things. He's a smart player, somebody that I think can be good in this league, and you can certainly win with. But the team and the structure around him offensively is just not good enough. And it's a shame. It really is. And you just lost him for probably 8 weeks. So you can kiss this season goodbye if he's not back. I know the schedule gets a lot easier after Green Bay, but it's hard to rattle off wins on a weekly basis. The Lions look much better. We'll see what the Jets look like with Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Well,
Indy had a big win, right? Like it's just, I don't know. But to say let's tank for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, you're a moron. Sorry, you're a moron.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, if sorry, I got the brain fog. I kind of look at what, and this isn't a perfect comparison because I think Mac's a better prospect at this point, but the Jets that season, they lost Sam Darnold and then they end up with the second, or what was it? They had the 4th pick and they traded up, whatever it was. right? And they took Zach Wilson. Like, Sam Darnold was still somewhat of a prospect at that point, but in theory, the player they drafted with the second pick would have been a better prospect. I don't know what Zach Wilson is, but like they could have taken Mac or Justin Fields or anybody but Trevor Lawrence, and it makes sense. If Mac really is going to miss like months, and you said 8 weeks, I think that's the high end of the spectrum. You know, if he gets this tightrope surgery, he may not even need to go on IR. If he doesn't, you're looking at 5-6 weeks with an easy schedule though. But let's say like they don't win another game until he comes back. Let's use that 6 weeks. That seems to be right in the middle. All right, you're 1-7, 1-8. If Mac misses 6 weeks, if you get a top 5 pick in this class, again, I still like Mac Jones. If you can get CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, you go with CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. I mean, those guys are better prospects, but I don't think, don't throw it all away just to get to that point is kind of what I'm saying. I don't think Mac is a bad option at this point either.
There's way bigger holes on their team to worry about than the quarterback, whether it's now or in April. It's just my point.
Right. Right.
That's way down the road, but
I will say this though, like if Mac is going to miss serious time, if it is that 2-month area, right, which doesn't put him back until maybe after Thanksgiving at this point, right? Then I think you entertain starting Bailey Zappi. If you start Brian Hoyer, I know this is going to sound crazy to people because they remember his last start against Kansas City, right? If you start Brian Hoyer, he's the safe option. He's been in an NFL offense. He knows what he's looking at. I don't know that he's going to win you any games, but you know what you're going to get, more or less, right? Bailey Zappi is going to go one of two ways. Either he's going to be terrible, and you probably are 1-7, 1-8 when Mac comes back, or hey, maybe he's good.
And not to bring up an old friend here, but this was my argument 2 years ago when you had Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham, but you ended up getting a quarterback out of that.
It's fair. No, it's fair. Maybe Bailey Zappi's good and you have a valuable asset to trade, right? Or maybe he's really good and you trade Mac. Like that's Adam Jones' take, not mine. I don't think Zappi's going to lap Mac Jones in year one, but the point being like something happens in that case, right? So I don't know where you stand on that. I would start Hoyer right away, one way or the other. Joe Judge was asked about it today. He did not sound enthusiastic about the idea of Bailey Zappi starting right now. I don't think he's ready yet. Now, maybe now that Mac's hurt, if they know he's going to miss a lot of time, they accelerate the process on Zappi. But, if we get into like 3, 4, 5 weeks, I'd kind of like to see Zappi.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Hoyer's here for situations like this, right, where something catastrophic happens where you lose your quarterback for, whether it's a week or 8 weeks, right? You can plug him in, you know exactly what you're going to get. It's somebody that knows your offense, knows your scheme, picks things up quickly, can play in a limited amount of time. But I think after that, there comes a limit where you need a little bit more from that position. And that's where you could, Brian Hoyer could play great. I still think, that clock will run out on his performance, on what you're going to get out of him. And you could see a Zappi in 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how things go. I think if they're winning games, like look at the Cowboys right now with Cooper Rush, right? I mean, granted, they haven't played. I mean, they beat Cincinnati and the Giants on the road. So you could have a situation like that where you just plug a serviceable guy in there and stub the game down to an extent where you can just control the game and win it. I know I'm connecting invisible dots here and probably talking crazy, but like, to turn the page being optimistic more on this season, like if you can get the absolute most out of whoever you play at quarterback and just dumb things down and take the Dallas route, you never know where you could be in 6 weeks, especially with the schedule. I know it's tougher than it looks, but there's a lot of home games in there. There's some teams you don't see much where you might be able to get lucky. That's my take on the rest of the season. Like, just stay afloat. I don't tank.
Right.
That stuff doesn't make sense to me.
I'm with you on that. I don't unless Mac's going to miss the whole.
They won't do that.
Season.
And they won't do that.
No, they won't tank. They don't. That's not what they do.
If they didn't tank with Cam Newton, with the 5 quarterbacks they knew coming out, they're not tanking this year. I'll tell you that right now. So we'll keep those takes.
You could argue a bigger quarterback class is less incentive to tank because you don't need a high pick to get a quality quarterback. But
true.
This is a big quarterback class too. This is because last year was obviously a down year for quarterbacks.
You got CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Sam Hartman, Will Levis. My bad. That I'm not
You
a
know,
Will
Levis
Levis
guy.
guy. No,
I
and
I,
I've
I
seen
don't.
that in
I
the chat
like
that
him.
people
I like him not that much. To me, it's Stroud, Young. I love KJ Jefferson. It sucks that Phil Dracovic sucks now. Michael Penix, if he can stay healthy.
Sam
I still
Hartman,
don't
give
know
him
what
some love.
Anthony
Sam Hartman
Richardson
of
is. Is
Sam
he
Hartman
gonna?
of Wake
He has
Forest.
another year, doesn't he? Or
I
is he coming out
think
this year?
the COVID thing messes me up all the time. You were gifted
Because
another year, so
he had that
yep.
heart condition or whatever it was, the lung
It was
condition. Remember,
blood
he
clots,
missed the
but he
first game
he
of the
only
year.
missed a game. Yeah, he only missed a
I know,
game.
but that's going to be like a major red flag for teams. I think if he can put another year between that and his,
That's true.
draft process,
But
I think I
he might be
like
like a
it sounds
6-year
like
guy next year because of
I
COVID and the other rules now.
would you rather come out after 5 years and be like a late day 2, early day 3 pick, or come out
No,
after
no, go
6
back.
years and
Joe
potentially be
Burrow. Look at
right?
Joe
Like
Burrow.
I don't know for sure, but like that's the kind of thing where I know there's been guys that they have those medical things and they'll wait to come out because teams will fixate on them. But if you put a year between it, it makes it less of a thing.
All right, so
Anyway,
we got our Mac ran off. It's
yeah,
you keep your comments to yourself and look at the big picture or understand what you're watching. It's not his fault. It's not all his fault. He could be better.
not all
I
his
think
fault. He
everybody
could
could.
be better. He could be. I don't
Everybody
want to
could
say
be
like
better.
he's been perfect. Because I've defended him pretty heavily. I don't want to come across and say there's no work to be done. There's certainly work to be done, but my issue isn't so much that he can't do the work. It's that they're going to be able to set it up where the work can be done. Like the team will set it up where the work can be done.
Right. So yeah, if you don't agree with that, I don't know what to tell you.
One more
Anyways,
thing on this. One more thing on this. And Ryan, you'll appreciate this analogy. Matt Olive, who I work with at 98.5, had a take when the Patriots, it was, I think, right after Cam got cut, right around there. And he was spot on. And I think he's proven right quicker than anybody expected. Mac Jones is the new Tuukka Rask. He's good. He's not necessarily the best. He's good,
it's a
but
great analogy.
it's if you don't know what you're watching or you don't really watch, he's a really easy guy to blame, and that's going to shift people's opinions on him. Mac Jones is the new Tuukka Rask.
Great. I gotta shoot him a text. That's a great analogy.
I loved it when I
I
heard.
agree with
I
it,
thought it was excellent. I still bring it up to him
and
all the time.
it's
It's
very
excellent.
evident right now. Very evident.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Tuukka won a Vezina and was, I think he's like second all time in save percentage, but never won the big game.
More the
Was
way
easy to
he's
point the
talked
finger
about.
at.
More the
Right?
way he's talked
No,
about. Yeah.
100% from a media and fan perspective, I completely agree. I do see it, but I think switching the page. I know we talked about it, but I guess expectations, right? I mean, the second opinion, what is he going to do? How long is he going to be out? I mean, we're not doctors. I'm not going to speculate. I know what's going on. A high ankle sprain. I fortunately have never had one. Don't know the timetable from, seeing around. It's probably just how bad it is, how quickly you can recover. I know we were texting yesterday about that tightrope thing. Tua got it and was back in 3 weeks. I looked. He was back practicing in 3 weeks, played in 4.
Well,
They had
he
a
had
bye week.
that the tightrope surgery.
Correct. Yes, his
Right.
junior was it his junior year?
I think he had it
No, I
twice.
think it was no, I think he got that and then like 2 weeks later the hip happened. So it was
Somebody
the year
had
he
it
was drafted.
twice. Maybe it was Jalen Hurts. One of their quarterbacks had it twice.
Right. So I mean that's an Alabama thing. I don't there's reports out there, right? I think it's interesting to see how they go about it. Is that something he wants to do or they don't want to, vice versa? I'm not sure. But I think any way you can get this guy back on the field as quick as possible without hindering him, long term in terms of, some questionable what it can do to your body later on. If it's something crazy like that, I'm sure that can be a holdup from both sides. But whatever you can do to get this guy back on the field as quick as possible and just stay afloat, I think is just the way you have to look at the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, that tightrope surgery sounds promising. If you don't know what that is, you used to hear about guys playing with like screws in their ankle or whatever. Trello and Super Bowl 39 is the first one that comes to mind, right? This is kind of the new evolution of that surgery. Instead of using a screw, they use, I don't know, I don't want to say a string because it's obviously stronger than a string, but some sort of fiber so they can stabilize it while still allowing for flexibility. I'm not a doctor. That's probably as in-depth as I'll tell you this. If you look up, tightrope surgery online, there's some really interesting, there's like animations that show how it's done. The guy who invented it, who's an Alabama team doctor, talking about it. SI is a really good article on it. Just look up tightrope surgery SI. Again, I don't know if it's like universal, if it can be done with every high ankle sprain. Every injury is different, right? Maybe Mac doesn't qualify for it. He went for a second opinion today, but that to me is the best case scenario. I do think, this isn't. They shouldn't rush him back. You don't want to risk long-term damage. As I said before, you talk about kind of screwing with the quarterback's development. You don't want it becoming a thing that lingers, but if they can get the surgery to get him back on the field quicker, I think that's something they should do.
Right. No, just stay afloat, right? I think that's just
right.
they're not going to tank, like we said. I'm interested to see what happens this weekend. Like they'll find a way to stay in the game. Like it's like defensively, they'll be able to do it. I think they'll be able to manage the clock. Obviously, you're going against one of the best quarterbacks ever, but they're working some kinks out too.
Yeah.
That defense looks real good. They looked really good on Sunday, so it'll definitely be a tough test. But I'd ride with Hoyer as long as you can. And like I said, he's serviceable for 2 to 3 weeks. If you can speed up Zappy and get him in, if things aren't going well for 2 to 3, and then hopefully you get Mac back. I would say 4 weeks, the earliest. And like I said, I'm not a doctor. I would say reasonably speaking, you're probably seeing him back anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks, depending on the severity of it. I don't see an instance where he can come back sooner. It's just, that's a tough injury, especially the plant foot, right? It's his left ankle. That's tough for a quarterback. So I don't know if you have anything else, Barth. I think that's I didn't want to break down any part of the game. Like that's just besides the point. I've seen enough on Twitter the last 48 hours where I just wanted to get a lot of that off my chest. I'm glad you did too, especially with the Mac Jones stuff.
I mean, I saw some stuff in the chat. People are bringing up, I'll start in defense. Devin McCourty, some people complaining about Devin McCourty's performance. They're really asking Devin McCourty to do a lot he doesn't typically do. And some of that's probably the Kyle Duggar injury, like man on Mark Andrews. That's not really his game. That's never really been his game. He's a deep zone guy. So hopefully when Kyle Duggar comes back, that goes away. Like I'll admit McCourty didn't look great in that game. I think he's playing out of position quite a bit. They need him kind of as that free safety. So hopefully when Duggar comes back, he has less, less coverage, man coverage responsibilities, or maybe Jabril Peppers can hang in there. Peppers didn't have a great game against the run. A lot of that second half was the Ravens running right at Peppers. And look, it's not easy defending Lamar Jackson running the ball. Tip your hat to Lamar Jackson first and foremost, but Jabril Peppers kind of struggled in that game. So maybe trying him more in coverage, I think would be interesting. And again, Duggar coming back is just going to help with all that. It frees guys up to do more. And then I did see people addressing it in the chat. It is probably something we're talking about. Or do you have a thought on the safeties first before we move on to that? Or on McCourty?
They played fine. It's a tough test. It's hard to judge a defense when you're facing an elite player like that. He's going to beat you. You're going to have great coverage, and he's just an athlete and going to make plays. It's hard to defend.
Shout out to Dietrich Wise, as somebody brought up in the chat. Shout out Dietrich Wise.
Elite.
Unreal. To start the season, not just that game, he's been excellent. The other big one is Miles Bryant, right? Muffed another punt. Did have a bounce back return, and that's kind of what Cam McCord said today when he's asked about it. Miles Bryant's a mentally tough guy. If he makes a mistake, he's going to bounce back. And he did it in the Pittsburgh game too. He had a big return after that adventure in the end zone. But eventually one of these mistakes is really going to burn them. They've kind of gotten by. I don't want to say they've been great. They've lost significant field position. They've kind of gotten by without it. But I think Marcus Jones is a good slot corner. Like, don't get me wrong, but part of the reason he was drafted as high as he was, you would think, at least part of the reason he was projected to go as high as he did, and the Patriots took him almost exactly in the range where he was projected to go. I think he was, the final projection was like 90 to 105, and they took him, whatever it was, 98 at the end of the third round there. But a big part of that projection was returnability. And if he's not going to do that, and he's not playing corner either, I don't know. And then, even if they don't trust a rookie returner, and yeah, he was up and down a little bit in the summer, maybe they want to give him more time. Jabril Peppers has been an elite punt returner, both in college and in the NFL. He's really good for the Giants in 2020. Miles Bryant's never done this before. Like, this is his first year as a punt returner. I know people want to see Marcus Jones. I think it should be Marcus Jones eventually. But if they don't feel comfortable with the rookie, if they don't want another Cyrus Jones situation, fine. But then Jabril Peppers. It's got to be one of those two to me. Returning punts. I don't think you can keep risking it with Miles Bryant.
I agree. I mean, you saw it, like you said, muffed one. They put Jones back in, decent return. They got about to the 25, but they have some serviceable guys that can do that job with
Yeah.
Jones and Peppers. When is it going to turn that? I know, like you said, Peppers coming off the ACL, ease him in. Jones is a rookie, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's coming in the coming weeks. One of those two guys kind of helps replace him. He'll have a role on defense somehow or some way. Sorry. But I think you can improve there. As much as people couldn't stand Gunnar Olszewski's an all-pro returner, it helps you out field position wise. Bryant's just, I don't know if you can trust him on a yearly basis there. So I don't have much from that. I granted don't want to talk about that game. Was just one of the worst ones to watch for a lot of reasons, for a lot of comments you got after it, and happy to turn the page. Like I said, just get your quarterback healthy, stay afloat the next 4 to 6 weeks, and see what happens.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised if things go south. They stay afloat, or they somehow win, 4 of the next 6 somehow, and Matt comes back and they're still somehow in the playoff. Like, you have no idea how this season's going to go. But they need to figure it out offensively and do a reality check from a coaching perspective and figure out, what are we doing here? Because it ultimately lost your quarterback and you need to figure it out around you. So that's my 2 cents. I'm done with this. Let's talk Thursday and talk about the Packers.
Well, hang on.
Hey,
sorry. Do you have to jump off? Because there is, the biggest thing we missed not doing the show Thursday. Where is it? I think you know where I'm going with this.
Boston
I don't know. Yeah. There's quite a bit going on here. Yes. Where do you want to start? We can hit on all 3, honestly. Where do you want to start?
Well, what's the third?
Well, the Red Sox got eliminated from the playoffs, so I guess we could just say bye to the Red Sox.
That's 1 of 2. That's 1 of 3. Let's go with the positive. I like the Zdeno Chara stuff. I don't have, got a couple minutes, but what an awesome guy, and just all world, all class. To play for 25 years, dude. I'm 97. He made his debut in 97. He's played my entire life. Like I said, my childhood was over when he retired, and he retired. So hats off. Awesome career. He's another guy that got a lot of hate, but he had one of the toughest jobs in hockey. Played my whole life, played college, being a shutdown defenseman, going against the best players in the world, playing 25 plus minutes a night for 15 to 20 years on an original 6 team is a tough job. And he did it at an elite level for a long time. So I know he probably played a little bit too long, but that's just who he is. Hats off to him. A phenomenal career, great guy, great player, better person. It's the best way I got to describe him.
Thoughts on they started camp. Was it yesterday or today? Oh no, that's the Celtics started yesterday. They've been in camp. They have a preseason game tonight. How you feeling? How you feeling about your
Bruins?
hockey team?
Love them right now. I do. I think they got to get healthy, stay afloat the first couple months. You got Marchand, McAvoy ain't banged up, Grzelcyk too. But once they get healthy, they got a really good top 6 and a really good bottom 6. I think there's a lot of guys. Their bottom 6 is logjam with Zaka, and is DeBrusque going to jump up with them? I think you leave the Hall, Pasternak, Krejci line, but there's a bunch of different combinations. I'm excited for their head coach. I think, talking to some guys I know from playing hockey and coaches that know him, this is a guy that expects a lot and demands a lot, but he's a player's coach, and young guys usually mesh really well with him. So I think they got a really good mix of experience and young players that can certainly, make a deep run. I think the biggest question last year was goaltending. You don't have that. You got a really good tandem. I feel really good about the Bruins. Really good. It's Bruins season now.
I'm worried about their blue line. I don't love the depth, especially early in the season. That group's going to get tested.
You can always make a move. You can make it. They do that. You can go.
They can.
Go get a third pair guy. Can eat minutes.
It's going to be interesting to see how that group
need a lot out of Brandon Carlo
my
this
big
year.
Question. Yes. No, they're asking for a ton out of him, and that's where, like you said, these younger players like playing for this coach. You're going to need that because you need young guys. Him also in the forward group like Jack Stanika. You're going to need a big year from. It'll be interesting to see. The Celtics. Look, we don't know what happened.
I'm not getting into I'm not getting into specifics. I don't think it is a big deal that they're losing him. Their team's good enough. Their team's good enough. This guy's just going to stay out of the way, run the same playbook. You need a lot of maturity out of those guys, I think, to be able to run it back. But if your team's good enough, I don't think the coach matters as long as you have guys on the same page. It's good they have Horford. I hope Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart and Tatum all take a step up leadership wise. I think that could be the only thing to hold them back from a coaching perspective. They're good enough to go back, whoever's coaching them. And I'm not getting into the details. It just doesn't, waste of time.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I worry a little bit just because Tatum and Brown loved playing for him so much. Jaylen Brown's contract's almost up. Does that impact their view of staying here long term? Not necessarily the organization suspending him. It sounds like they agree with the need to suspend him for whatever reason, but him not, he's not here. It sounds like Jason Tatum's loves Joe Mazzulla, so that's big. In terms of the season itself, they have been a little mentally fragile at times. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it. I still would like to see them get another, wing, another, 3-and-D wing, especially
they had it with Gallinari.
Yeah. Right. So the really interesting one to me, and I wrote about this today on 98.5thesportshub.com, is Jay Crowder just requested a trade, or just like within the last couple of days. Would be a tremendous fit. I think a tremendous fit. Phoenix needs to get rid of him. The Celtics could move Danilo Gallinari's contract to make it work. Maybe sweeten the pot with some picks. I wasn't into the idea of adding Carmelo Anthony. I wasn't into any of that. Oh, if they can add Jay Crowder, that would be fun. So that's going to be an interesting team to watch. They begin training camp today. And the Red Sox are out of the playoffs. Whoop-de-doo. No excuses for Bloom not to go big this offseason. None. There's 10 games to go. In this team is out of the playoffs with a $240 million payroll. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And you talk about ruining rookies, right? We talked about kind of the player development earlier in the show. Bayo, Cassis, these guys might be it. Don't tinker around with them. Let them play. Don't platoon them. Don't platoon Cassis. Don't start bouncing Bayo back and forth from the rotation to the bullpen. Let them play.
They're good enough to. That's for sure. They're certainly good enough.
They're exciting players.
Cassis is your everyday first baseman next year. You've gotten absolutely nothing from that position for 3-4 years now. And Bayo looks like a front of the rotation type of guy developing into. So he's got elite stuff. I watched him pitch Sunday. He's got elite stuff.
Yeah, he can pitch. He's fine. And he'll get better. Like he's even said, he's got work to do. So sorry, had to get that in after we missed. I picked a hell of a. It's not like anything big happened in Boston sports over the last 6 days, right? That I was sick. Crazy. I missed nothing. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we will talk to you all on Thursday.